Hello everyone, welcome back again. Hope you all are doing very good. And in the last video, we completed the basic concepts like objects. What is an object? What is a class? What are the attributes? What are methods? How can you create public, private, and protected attributes and method? How can you go and fetch private attributes? We also saw what is a constructor and what is a destructor. So agenda for today's session is we'll be completing the key concepts of object-oriented programming, that is abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, overriding, and polymorphism. Then we'll take a look at exception handling and try catch block, how to write that block, and then we'll see some important modules used in Python. Okay, so let us start with the key concepts, and the first key concept is abstraction. What actually abstraction means is when a complex reality is simplified. When a complex reality is simplified, we say abstraction is happening. Now, how can we see this in the form of an example? So a car, when you buy a car, what you do is you directly just key in the car, you self start it, or maybe just you start your car and then you start driving. That's it. You don't know what exactly has happened inside. We are not aware of that. So we are not aware of the complexity what is happening inside. Same happens here in the code. The users are not sure, okay, what is happening inside the application that they are using, but there are a lot of things happening. So what they say is the abstract form of what a developer has created. That's why we are saying it. Abstraction is simplifying complex reality by modeling classes appropriate to the problem. Okay, so what we do is, creating classes and object, those are a part of how to create the application, how to write a program. But abstraction is actually simplifying that complex reality, and just to show you the simple part, just to show you the part that you just use, and the functioning part that you just take and use, like human body. So much things go inside us, but what we see is a complete body, the upper body, the face, the lower body, people doing their daily duty as usual. So we are not aware of what is going inside. We only see the abstract form of whether it's a car or it's a human body or anything else. So that's actually is abstraction. Okay, in the form of Python code, how can we relate this abstraction to the Python code? So this is nothing but we calculate, or say we uh, do so much of calculations within your code. We create so much of classes, objects, we use so much of concepts inside that, but the person who uses it does not know about the complexity of it. He just enters into the application and he starts using. So he cannot, or he is not aware of what is being done inside, or what has been done inside, what is the complexity that is running inside. So the user is not aware of it. So we call it abstraction, because the complex realities is simplified by just showcasing the upper part of it. That's it. This is abstraction. Okay, so we don't need to see any example on it, because whatever is happening is just is complete abstraction. I mean, you don't need to execute anything. Okay, everything that you do comes as a part of abstraction in object oriented programming concepts. Then the second thing is encapsulation. What encapsulation is? Actually, we have completed in encapsulation in the last video itself. I did not tell you the actual name. We'll see the actual name now. What encapsulation is? It is a mechanism for restricting the access to some of an object components. So what is an object component? An object component is a variable, or a attribute, or a method, or a function. So we already saw the restriction methods by using private, public, and not public but private and protected methods that were used with methods and attributes to restrict their access. That itself was encapsulation. So what is being done is, so everything is coupled tightly: the functions, the methods, the attributes, the classes, the objects, everything is coupled tightly, and the components inside that, like methods and attributes, have restricted access. And all together, the holistic picture of all these things, if we take, that we call as encapsulation in the context of object oriented programming. So if you see the definition, what's written here is encapsulation is a mechanism for restricting the access to some of an object components. It means internal representation cannot be seen from outside. Exactly, we are not sure that which of the attributes are public, which of the attributes are private, which of the attributes are protected, what objects have we created, what methods have we created inside that. We are not aware of those things. Okay, so everything is tightly coupled and that keeps on running inside your code. So that we call as encapsulation. The example for encapsulation is, we have already seen it. I'll just give you a look. So this is what encapsulation is. To making an attribute public, making an attribute protected, making an attribute private, or you can say restricting the access of a method or an attribute comes under encapsulation. Okay, so we have already seen this program, and so if anybody asks you what encapsulation exactly is, you can directly explain this example, and that is done for encapsulation. Okay, now we'll move on to inheritance, a very, very important topic, and it's very, very real time. I mean, when you say inheritance, we have been listening to this particular word every first or second day, every another day you go and listen this word inherit. He is inheriting something from his father, he has inherited something from his grandfather, or the company has inherited something from its parent company, the employee has inherited something from his manager. So we keep on listening this particular term every another day. What exactly inheritance is in the context of object oriented programming? Inheritance is, let's say we have created two classes. We have a class called A, that is the parent class, and we have a class called, let's not call it parent, or just understand that we have two classes. We have a class called A and another class called B. Now we have a few methods that is defined in the parent class, but we don't have, I mean the B class does not have those methods. So what we will do is, we'll try inheriting that A class, and when you inherit that A class, that's called inheritance. And what you do is, you just pass the parent class name into the child class name. Now here assume we have two classes A and B. A has some method, but B does not have same method. So what we will do is, A will be inherited into B just by passing the name A into the bracket, and all the methods present in class A can be accessed by the object of class B also. This is called inheritance. You are inheriting the properties, that is attributes and methods of another class. That class is called the base class or parent class, and the class that is inheriting is called the child class or the inherited class. Okay, so inheritance. So inheritance is of three types. Maybe one person is there, or let's say there is a team, and you have a delivery manager, you have a project manager. There is an employee who is inheriting only from the manager and not from the delivery manager. That's single inheritance. That's single inheritance. You can see the first one, that's single inheritance. Second one is multiple inheritance. Okay, two different employees are inheriting some of the characteristics of your manager. One manager here is C, and two employees A and B. So C is inheriting from both. That's called multiple inheritance. So multi-level, let's say we have a manager, then we have a team lead, and then we have an employee. So employee is inheriting from the team lead, and team lead is inheriting from the manager. That is called multi-level inheritance. You can see that A, B and C. So this is the three categorization of inheritance. First is single inheritance, second is multiple inheritance, third is multi-level inheritance. So inheritance, let's see the definition. It's the powerful feature of object-oriented programming. It refers to a deriving class from the base class with little or no modification. Yes, maybe what exactly modification is we'll see, but what happens here is, a class tries to fetch the properties of different class that we call as base class is called inheritance. We'll see examples on it. As of now, you just have to understand one class inheritance, the features of another class. The one which is inheriting is called the child class, and the one that is inherited is called the parent class or the base class, and that is called inheritance. There are three types: single inheritance, multiple inheritance, and multi-level inheritance. Okay, so we'll see the example of inheritance, and then we'll proceed on to the next topic called overriding. So let's see the example of inheritance for all these three categorizations: single, multiple, and multi-level. Okay, let me scroll down to. So this is single inheritance. The code is very clear. I have written is very simple so that you understand the basic of what exactly inheritance is. I've created a class A, okay, and then I have defined an attribute called name, and I have assigned a value called ABC. I've created a method called show data, and the show data method does nothing but simply prints show data from a class. And show data is taking an argument self that is by default. We do not need to pass anything. Fine. So this is a class A created with one attribute and one method. Now I have created a class B, and it contains a method called print data. Okay. Same, it is also printing data from class B and taking one default argument, that is self. And what I'm trying to do is, if the requirement is that object of B class tries, or object of B class needs the method show data. How can we do it? So rather than again creating the same method in class B, what we can do is we can inherit from class A and directly access this show data method. So the method for inheriting is just pass the parent class into the child class in using this syntax. Now we have inherited this A class into B class. Okay. Now when we will create the object of class B, then that object can easily access the name attribute of class A and show data method of class A. And as well as it can access its own method. That's a different thing. I mean, that it will access by default, but if you are inheriting, it will also access the methods and attributes of its parent class. Fine. So let me execute this. So this block got executed. Now next block, what I'm trying to do here is I'm creating an object of class B called B1. I'm creating an object B1 of class B, and then I'm trying to fetch this name and show data method. So let me run this. When you run this, you can see that b1.name prints show data from class A, that is this thing, that is this, and then b1.show data, oh sorry, b1.show data shows you show data from A class excuse me, and then b1 dot name gives you the result of, or gives you the value of what exactly has been assigned to ABC attribute. So what happened here? We created a class, we inherited the same class into some another class, that is the child class. We created the object of child class, and then the object of child class can access the attributes and method of the parent class. This is called single inheritance. Hope this is clear to you. We'll move on to the next one, that is multiple inheritance, right? So this is multiple inheritance, the same way, almost same class. The derived class inherits from a class which in turn inherits from other class. I think here the definition is not that correct, so just forget this. This is the definition of multi-level. So remove this, and second, okay, okay. Okay, so here I've created a class called A and another two classes B and C. What A contains is A contains a method called show data. Then we have two classes B and C. Both B and C are inheriting from class A. That means the object of both B and C can access the methods and attributes of class A. Correct? So this is called multiple inheritance. That means multiple classes are inheriting from the single class, that we call as multiple inheritance. Okay, so I've created an object of C1 class. Okay, that is C class, that is C1, and then I'll fetch this. Okay, just a second. It is showing some error. Let me see. Okay, this was not executed. First let me execute this. Now I'm creating an object. So object C1 got created. Now the object C1 can access this show data. I'll execute this. Now what happened here? Understand. Guys, I have also used super here. So we'll discuss the concept. What exactly is happening here? C1.show data. That means here it will come show data. Now we have a keyword called super. Now we have a keyword called super. What is happening here? The child class also contains show data and the parent class also contains show data. Now what if you don't want to access your show data method, but you want to access the method of the show data method of parent class? Let's say this is your requirement. Maybe you can assume this, why this requirement came, because the show data method of parent class had some extra features, and show data method of C does not contain that particular feature. So what the child tries to do is, child tries to fetch the method of show data. Let's say I have a camera, my father has a camera, but my camera has not a 8x zooming feature. What I'll do is, I'll borrow from my I'll take the camera from my father and I'll start clicking from that camera. Same is happening here. The show data method of class C does not contain some specific properties. So what it does is, it tries to fetch the show data method of parent class. So in such scenario, what we have to do is, we have to use the super keyword. Okay, so once you have created this object and once you try to call c1.showData, what will happen? This your will first enter into C class. Okay, it will enter into C class, and as soon as it enters into C class, it will encounter this statement. It has not yet reached the print statement, it is still here. So now it has encountered super. So what it will do is, this will transfer the counter to class A. Okay, now the counter comes here. Now again he gets show data, and there it prints from a show data. Here you get the output from a show data. Fine. Now again, once this is printed, the counter, the control returns back here. The control returns back here, and then control moves on to the print statement mentioned in the class C, and now it prints from C show data. If you would not have used super here, then it would have simply printed from C show data. Let me show you once again. Executed. Done. Executed. Now you can see from C show data, because the show data method is in both A and C class. So if you are not using super, that means you are not trying to call the method of parent class. It will show you the method of its own, the method within this. And if you're using super, it will call the show data method of its parent class. So this is the significance of super. There are other significances also, but this is the most important one, and hope you've understood what exactly super does. So this was multiple inheritance, guys. That means two classes are trying to inherit from the same class, and object of both those child classes can fetch the objects, can fetch the methods and attributes of parent class. Here the object of both C and B class can access the attributes and the method of class A, because both B and C are inheriting from the parent class called A. So this is called multiple inheritance. Now the third type was multi-level. The example that I gave you: manager, team lead, employee. Employee is inheriting from the team lead, and team lead is inheriting from the manager. Okay, so now let's see multi-level. Here I have created three classes. Class A, again show data method. Class B, again show data method, but here B is inheriting from class A. Fine. Again a third class is created, that is C class, and C class is trying to inherit from class B and not class A. So class A is giving the access of objects of class B to fetch its or access its methods and attributes, and the same B is doing to C. So this is called multi-level inheritance. Let's execute this. So I'll execute this one, and then I'll try creating an object of C class. I've created C class, object C1 got created. Now let's say I'm trying to fetch show data method from the C1 object. Now what should be printed? Now you can see the output, but guess what should be printed? Let's see how the control moves here. You've created the object. Now what you have done is you have written a.showData. Correct? So a.showData, that means it will go here and it will print from a show data, and again the counter will return back here, then it will print from C show data. So let's execute this first. Fine. So this, now if you'd have made this B, now it would show from B show data and from C show data. So this is how one method, one class inherits from the another class, and the second class inherits from the first class, and the third class inherits from the second class. There could be so many examples on it, and you can do so many hands-on on this. What if I'm trying to directly fetch the method of A, or what if B is trying to fetch the method of C? So much of R&D can be done on it. So much of permutations and combinations can be created based on this scenario. But first thing is to understand the basic building block of it, and the basic building block is that we already saw now. So what you can do is you can import this Jupyter notebook file, or you can directly copy this code snippet and try doing some R&D into your machine. First try understanding the basics of all the three types of inheritance, and then start making some changes. Maybe you can make some changes in class A, then you can make some changes into class B, then make some changes into class C, and keep on practicing. That will clear all the concepts. Okay, and because we cannot do each and every scenarios here, so you can try it yourself. In case you have any doubt, you can put the doubt in comment section and I'll answer it ASAP. As soon as I'll get the time, I'll try answering your doubt, but do practice of your own, and then I'll try helping you in case you face any problem. So we saw three types of inheritance, guys. We saw single inheritance, we saw multi-level inheritance, and we saw multiple inheritance. Okay, we also saw examples based on this, and we also saw the concept of super. Okay, so now let's move on to the next topic, and the next topic is, so this completes three things: abstraction, encapsulation, and inheritance. Next is overriding. Parent class methods can always be overridden. One reason for overriding parents method is because you may want special or different functionality in your subclass. Yes. Now let's say, again, you can see the code snippet here. Let me maximize it. I'm maximizing it. When you override something, when you override something, that means you are putting something of yours into the existing thing. You are putting some content, you're trying to put some content of your own into the method, or method only. You are trying to modify that method with some new functionality that is already existing. So here what is happening, show data method is already existing in the parent class A, but the child class B tries to override it. He tries to add something from its own so that it overrides it. Okay, so same thing is happening here. Show data method, you can see the show data method of parent class. What it does, we have created a class called show data, define show data, and then I'm passing three arguments here. First is by default self argument, that is object creation. Then we'll be passing name, and third one is course is not set. In case a candidate is trying to explore what all courses are present, and you don't, your show data method does not have this functionality that okay, course is equal to course is not set, that is in your parent class, but you want to change that and you want to make some modification to it. So you create the same show data method into the B class and you make some changes into it, and that's called overriding. Parent class methods can always be overridden. Here you are trying to override the already existing method of your parent class, and that is because you want to add some special or different functionality into your subclass. So what is happening here? Take a look. Define a class A. I have defined a method called show data, and that method will give name is name and course. Okay, you are passing name, and if you are passing course, it will print name is this and course. But if you are not passing course, it will take the by default argument course is not set. But if you are passing course, it will directly print the name is this and course is this. Then we have another class called B, and the B class is inheriting from the class A. What is happening here? Again the same method, and only one argument is being passed. I mean two. Let's not take self into consideration because it's by default. So here again one argument is being passed, name. From B, name is name. Okay. Now I'm trying to create an object of class B called B1, and then I'll fetch this show data method and I'll pass a name called Aditya. So what will happen? So when the objects gets created, the control will be here. The control will be here, and print B name is Aditya. So this directly got preempted. This directly got preempted because now if you want to fetch, now both the methods we have already seen, if you want to fetch the parent class method or you want to execute your own method. Here I have commented super dot show data because we are trying to access the show data method of child class itself and not the show data method of parent class. That's why I have commented out this super keyword, and then it's directly printing. Now if you remove this comment here, what will happen? It will again go here. And since you are not passing course here, what it will print first? It will print name is Aditya, course is not defined. Then again the control will come back here and it will print from B, name is Aditya. So this is called overriding. In the last example, what we did is the method name were same, the arguments being passed were same, only the classes were different. Here we are trying to override the existing method of parent class, and that is done in this way. Just comment out super and it will access the method that is present in its own class, or you can say the modified method of the class that is present in the parent class. Okay, so this is overriding, guys. Let's see the example of it. We'll execute one example. This is overriding. I'll execute it. What I've done here is we have already seen a class A, class B, passing one argument name, and in the parent class, if you're not passing course, it will give you a message course not set, and that is not required in child class because there is only one argument required, that is name. So I'll execute it. Then I'll try creating this B1. Then from B, name is Aditya. Now let me remove this. What will happen? Just guess. Name is Aditya, course not set. Again the control comes back here, and then the control prints from B, name is Aditya. So this is called just a second, guys, just a second. My bad. So we just saw what exactly overriding is. Hope this is clear. You can do a lot of practice on this. Just take this example and you can do not less than 6, 7, 10 changes to it, and you can practice, I mean create your own scenarios and practice. That will obviously give you much more confidence. Just try understanding the basic things here and go and try it out in your machine, and that will for sure give you a lot of confidence. That will boost a lot of confidence in you when you practice the code snippet, and by making some changes. Just don't copy and paste it, make some changes, put your own stuff into this code snippet and then try running it. It will obviously give you a lot of confidence. Okay, we'll move on to the next example, and that is overloading, also called polymorphism. One method, multiple forms. One method, multiple forms is called polymorphism. It is also called overloading. Overloading means what? What exactly overloading means? You have loaded something till it reaches the maximum point. Even more than that, you eat so much, we say we are overloaded. uh, a truck, we have overloaded material into it. It is overflowing because we have overloaded the truck. Same happens here. Here the overloading points to the arguments that is being passed into the function, into the method. So you are overloading it. First, let's say you had a method that was only taking one argument. Then you created the same method and you passed two argument. You created the same method and you passed three arguments. So what you are doing is you are overloading it. First it was 1, then it was 2, and now it is 3. You are overloading the method with different number of arguments. Now this would have worked in Java. This would have worked in C++, but Python does not support overloading. Then why we are seeing it? So just to understand what happens if we try replicating the same scenarios with Python. What happens if we create three methods of same name and we try passing three different number of arguments into the method? What will happen? So what will happen? I'll directly jump onto the conclusion. If you do like this, let's see the code here. Class test, three methods, three same methods, show data, show data, show data. The first method only accepts one argument self. The second method accepts one more argument called first along with self, and the third one accepts first and second along with the self. So you have overloaded the show data method with different number of arguments. So what if I try creating an object of test? So I've created an object T1 test, and then I'm trying to fetch show data by passing one argument. Had this code been implemented in Java, this would have worked. When you are passing only one argument, it would have called the second show data method, because second show data method takes only one argument. But this does not happen in Python. What will happen? It will give you error, because Python will only consider the last method. Python will only consider the last method. It will only run if you pass at least two arguments to it along with the self. Or you can say besides self, you have to pass two arguments, then only this will work. This will not give error. I mean, you can go and define 10 functions with the same name. You can pass multiple arguments in the methods defined. But when you are trying to fetch that method, then you have to pass the same number of argument that is being received by the last defined method in the class. Last defined method, here the last defined method is show data, and it is accepting two arguments apart from self. So to run this code, we always need to pass two arguments, and self will go automatically. So at least we have to pass two arguments to run this code snippet. That's why it is called overloading. Is not supported by Python, but if you try to create overloaded function, it will work, but it will give you error when you try to fetch that method. It will only fetch the last method defined inside your code snippet. Okay, so let's do the example. Okay, overloading. This is overloading. Let me execute. This code will not give error. Perfectly fine. Created an object. Error. Had this code been implemented or executed in Java or C++, it would have given the output show data first 10. But here in Python it will not be executed. Now I'll pass output. It is printing first, or you can also write here first, second, 10, 20. So this is overloading, guys, and this means one class can have same method with different parameter files. This is not supported by Python. This completes the fifth key concept of object-oriented programming. So I have shown examples on all the five, not all the five, all the four, and we have discussed about abstraction. So what you have to do is just run the code once in your machine, whatever I have shown you. Then in the second run, start making some changes, basic changes, and then observe the result. Do at least 5 for each properties. So there are 4 properties. So make at least 20 changes to these 4 code snippets and observe the output. Believe me, you'll have much more confidence even if you do 10 or 12 changes. Okay, so first execute this whole code and then try doing some R&D into your machine using this code snippet, using this Jupyter Notebook file. Okay, so hope this is clear to you. Now we will move on to the next important topic, that is exception handling. It's a type of error. Exception is a type of error. Why do we call it exception? So let's go through the theoretical definitions that I've written here, then I'll explain you. An exception is a signal occurs when an error or other usual condition happens. Maybe it has encountered some wrong value. It will give you error, give you exception. But this can be handled. Why do we need to handle exception? We'll see that. So exceptions can be handled. So let me first explain you, then we'll go through this theoretical portion. Error can be of 3 types. First is, let's say you have written a code and you have made some syntactical error. Like you have made some class sensitive, insensitive name, or you have made some indentation error, or maybe you have used some wrong spelling or something like that, then it will be, you'll get to know that during the compile time. Okay, during the compile time, when you run it, it will give you error. Okay, this is not correct. You'll go and correct it there itself. So that is called syntactical error. Second is logical error. You have not made any syntactical error in your code, but your logic is not working properly. It has some bugs. In case of some specific scenarios, your logic is bursting, it's not working, then that is called logical error. That also you go and make changes into your code and you can fix that bug. Now what happens, the error is not yours, you are not making that mistake, a user is making the mistake. Let's say you are creating an application and it is taking two input from the user. First input is, let's say, the gross salary, and the second is number of working days. Let's say I want to calculate my per day salary. So first input would be the gross salary and the second input is number of working days. Fine, you are creating a simple application. So when you create this application, so we need some input from the user. So user will enter, let's say his package is 5 lakhs and his working days is 200. So it will divide and will give you the value that, okay, 5 lakhs upon 200 will give you, okay, this was your daily income for 200 working days. Fine. What if by mistake that user enters 0 instead of 200? What will happen? Your code will crash. Your code will crash and everything will stop there itself. But we don't want this to happen. There are so many important, crucial financial transactions, applications going on. And for such a silly mistake, you cannot abort each and everything just for this particular silly mistake. Okay, so this was exception handling, guys. So we saw first the error could be a syntactical error, the second error could be a logical error, and the third error could be the error that is made by the users and not the developers. So what developers have to do, they have to handle those exceptions because so many, as I explained earlier, because so many important applications, so many important transactions and so many banking data keeps on executing, so you cannot just abruptly abort the complete execution just for one silly mistake. So what we have to consider is, we have to consider all such scenarios where a user can make a mistake and uh, that can lead to the crush of our program. So what we do is, for such problems we do the handling of exceptions. So what exceptions can happen, we go and handle it. And for handling those exceptions, we have a code block called try catch. So we call it try catch block, and that will hold your exceptions, that will handle your exception, and that will refrain from getting your, I mean, that will stop from getting your application or program crushed. So it will show you error message, but the program will not stop, it will keep on executing. So that's why we go for try catch. So let us go through the theoretical definitions of this once. An exception is a signal occurs when an error or other unusual condition has occurred. Like I explained, I'm 10 by 0, dividing by 0 is again unusual condition. We don't divide anything by 0, so that's an unusual condition. Then exceptions can be handled using a try statement. So if someone is trying to divide by 0, or maybe you have some database connectivity issue, or maybe some particular file is not present, in every such case we can go and handle that exception in try catch block. That's written in the second point. Exceptions can be handled using a try statement, a critical operation which can raise exception in place inside the try clause, and the code that handles exception is written in except clause. Okay, now you will say, okay, try, if this is happening, just print this. It's like if else statement. We'll see the example again. A try clause can have any number of except clause to handle them differently, but only one will be executed in case an exception occurs. This is very simple. I mean, if an error comes, the error will be, the root cause will be just one. Either a database connectivity, either a file access is not there, either the file itself is not there, or maybe divide by 0. So any one error will be there. So one of the catch block will be executed based on the type of error encountered. Okay, a try statement in Python can have an optional finally clause. We'll see what exactly finally is. Finally is actually used to release external resources. Let's say you want to close some file, or you want to revoke access of something, or you want to close the cursor. Releasing resource is the main importance of using finally clause, and it's optional. It will execute every time. That we have to keep in mind. It will execute every time. We are using try, catch, and finally. Let's say if an error occurs, if an exception occurs, try. If you have handled that in try, it will then route it to the proper message mentioned in the catch block. And once the try catch block execution is done, then the control will move on to finally, and whatever is there in finally will be printed. Either it will be printed or it will release the external resource. So this is called exceptional handling, and these are the important points. Let's see one example of it. Try catch finally block. So here you can see I'm trying to open a file called test file. Okay, I'm trying to open a file called test file. So I'm writing that in the try block. Okay, fh open. Just now you can see the importance of object oriented programming. Open is again a function, and you are passing two arguments into it, and that is being stored into a variable called fh. Okay, so fh is equal to open test file, right? Fh.write, this is my test file for exception handling. Like you are trying to open a file into write mode, and you are trying to write something into it. In case that file is not present, in case that test file that you are trying to open and write into it is not present at that particular location, what will happen? Your program will crash. So to avoid that crashing of your program, what we have done is we have mentioned that in the try statement. So even if that file is not present, or maybe you don't have some particular access to write into that file, what will happen? The program will not crash, rather it will print your error message that you cannot find the file, or cannot read the data, or you cannot write into it. So this except block will be executed. Try catch, I was saying, actually it's except block. So that except will be executed, and then finally it will be closing. So you can see here test file is not present, and the error message is printed. Error cannot find a file or read data. If we would not have used this try and except and finally here, what would have happened? Due to the missing file, test file, our complete application, our complete ongoing transaction would have aborted abruptly. That would have led to the loss of, so much of financial loss. If you are working in some banking domain, or if you are working in some insurance domain. Okay, so we'll see examples of this. So example, we'll see try catch, try and except. Every time I speak catch, so understand, take it as except. So I'll show you two examples of it. Now this is a very simple example. You are trying to take input from the user. Okay, you are trying to take input from the user, and as you know, input is always in a string. So we are trying to convert into, since this is amount, we are trying to convert into int. And then in case you are not entering an integer value, it should print an error. So let me run this. So what I've done is try amount. Okay, enter your amount, except amount must be in numbers. If you are writing some special character, or if you are writing some string, what it will do is it will print amount must be integer. And then finally comes every time. And if you want to do any operation after that, then you can do into finally block, because finally will be executed every time. Now let me execute this. It is asking for the amount. Let me enter 10 first. So I've entered 10. Finally comes. Now this is true. Now this did not throw an error. So this did not move into the second statement, except statement. Now let me run it again, and let me enter a string this time. Now I have entered a. Amount must be integer. So now you saw that if you are entering a wrong value, it is handling, it is giving you an error message. Okay, amount should not be a string, amount should not be a special character, it should only be an integer. Okay, so hope this is clear. Now let's see next one. 10 by 0, enter amount, exception ES, print comes every time. If you try executing this, enter again, input 100, finally comes every time. Okay, let me execute once again, and I'll put a here. So invalid literal with base A, again you get the error, and your program did not crash, rather the error was handled. Now let us see multiple one. Now this is, you can use, as we saw, we can use multiple except statement after a try statement. Here I'm trying 10 by 0, or maybe you can take an input from the number, and then you can write number upon 0. So what should be the error? The error should be 0 divide error. As I said, only one of the except blocks will be invoked based on the error you are getting. So here this block will be invoked, and your error will be class error, 0 division error. So let me execute this. Okay, this is a 0 division error. Okay, so this is how we can handle things, guys. And there are multiple examples. So the main purpose of exceptional handling was, if a user makes some mistake, then you have to understand that what are the scenarios where a input from the user can burst your code, can burst your program. So that we have to think, and that we have to handle already in your code, so that even if you enter some wrong value, that should display a message rather than abruptly aborting your complete transaction or program. So hope this is clear to you. Okay, so and this error types could be divide by 0, database connectivity error, file not present, access error, input value should not be negative, or input value should not be greater than. So there could be so many things that you can you can try of your own, that can be used inside a try statement and except and finally block. Okay, so this was for exception handling, guys. The last topic for today's, that's a very small topic, and we are already using that. What are modules in Python? So see, Python module allows you to logically organize the code. Python files are nothing but .py. Python modules, I meant to say, I think this, I have made some mistake here. So this should be modules here. Python modules are nothing but Python file with .py extension. Module contains Python definitions and statements. It is used by import statement. You can also use from. dir is a built-in function that will return you all the functions variables inside that particular module. Okay, so if you remember, I was trying to change the current working directory, or I was trying to fetch the current working directory. Then I had imported a module called OS. So I wrote there import OS, and then inside that I wrote os.getcwd, get current working directory. What this means is, OS is a module, OS is your module, and OS contains a lot of functions, and getcwd is one of the functions that is present inside the OS module. So to use that getcwd function, you have to first import that OS module. So import, I have explained you. So import module. Now what if, let's say we have another module called math. So, but I don't want the complete module to be imported. I just want sqrt function, because I only need sqrt function. So what we have to do is, we don't need to import the complete module. Rather we can write from math import sqrt. That means from math module, you are trying to import a function called sqrt. That's it. So here math is a module and sqrt is a function of it. So let us see how many important modules are there in Python. There are so many, but these are the important modules. We have system module. I mean, if you want to get out of your, let's say if you want to exit your current from the current directory, you can write sys.exit. But this exit function is defined in sys module. So to use exit function, you'll have to first import sys module. OS, if you want to get current working directory, so if you want to use function like current working directory, then you have to import the OS module first. If you want to use functions like trigonometric functions, if you want to use square root, cube root, modulus, absolute values, then you have to import the math module first. Now if you want to do some maybe if you want to get some date time like related functions, then you have to import date time module, random module. Maybe if you want to generate some random numbers, then in case you have to import, if you want to generate some random numbers, then you have to import a module called random, and you have to use a random generating numbers functions related to number functions related to the random numbers generation function. So that you have to use, then you'll have to import a random function, and then JSON. To read JSON files, you have to import the module called JSON. So these are nothing but a logically tightly coupled code, and if you want to use a particular function from that module, you have to import the module first, and then you have to use those functions. Or if you want to use just one or two functions, so rather than importing the complete module, you can just import the two important functions that you need. That's it. So this is module, and we'll see many more examples on it. And when we'll move on to maybe our next data science classes, then there I'll explain you so many examples. I'll give you a list of all the functions, and the most easiest thing is just write dir and pass this system or OS or math or datetime inside this. That will give you the list of all the functions present in a module. Okay, and then you can easily use, and you can easily get to know that what all functions or what all attributes or what all things are present inside a particular module. So a lot more will be coming on this module. This was just an example just to make you understand what a module is. So a lot more will be coming in our further videos and classes. Okay. So that's it for today, guys. We have completed the object oriented concepts. We have completed class, objects, attributes, methods. We saw private, public, protected methods and attributes. We saw what is a constructor, what is a destructor. We saw what is the key concepts of object oriented programming, like abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, multiple types of inheritance, polymorphism, overriding. Then we saw handling exceptions, and then we saw modules. We also saw the concepts of self and super. So this is more than sufficient to for you to start working in object oriented maybe, or you can say that this paves path for you to do some practice in this. Or maybe you can see that what all things are used or what all things are related to object oriented concepts. So these are the basic building blocks. This all is completed, and do practice it, because a lot of practice is required in it. So just copy the code and do 20-30 changes to the code snippet and observe the output, and that will for sure boost up your confidence. Okay, so that's it, guys. So we'll wrap up for today. We'll meet in the next video session, where I'll explain you the data analytics, where we'll see NumPy, pandas and matplotlib. Okay, till then, do practice. Drop me an email if you want the Jupyter notebook file. I'll give you the link of my Google Drive. And till then, take care. Goodbye, and do practice. Thank you so much.